everybody. My name is Amber Sand. I am on the board of the North Dakota Homeschool Association, and I am here with Lori Wentz, who is our special needs coordinator for the North Dakota Homeschool Association. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori here and let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does and her own homeschooling story, if she would, and why she's passionate about special needs.
Thank you for having me. I have been involved in education for a very, very long time. Actually, my family's background, my grandmother was a one-room schoolhouse teacher. My mother modified curriculum for special needs kids for 10 some years as well in a public school. So education is something passionate in my family. So that's always been passed down, and very supportive of my homeschool has always been, which is really nice. Not everybody has that. Mm-hmm. And I've been married 29 years, just recently had an anniversary.
Oh, well, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yep, I have 3 kiddos. My oldest one is autistic gifted. My identical boys, who are 20, they are, as of right now, one has an high functioning autism ADD diagnosis. The other has just ADD, although I think there could be other fun little things in there, but he's so functional that it really doesn't matter. But I've walked that road of special needs. And so I know what it's like to be dealing with a child with those issues. So that's part of the reason I'm so passionate about it myself. My original background was I had Lizzie in public school when she was little. We went to Head Start preschool, and I was actually involved in policy council on that. So I got familiar with the way funding works, the way the state looks at education. I had a lot of that background experience. Mm-hmm. And I also went to OSEP in Washington, D.C., which is the special education department, as a parent rep. So I would talk about the needs of special needs kids in our state, but all that was under the public school window. And I did a lot of advocacy work. I was part of RICC, which is the Regional Interagency Coordinating Committee, which is a lot of gobbledygook that basically says from pregnancy up to school age, anyone who touches those children, from pediatricians to foster care to social services, anything. Head Start is part of that as well. We had all of them there. Mm-hmm. And my main focus when I was there was autism. We lowered the age for autism diagnosis from 24 months to 18 during the time I was in there in the state of North Dakota. So I'm very proud of that. Mm-hmm. So I got a lot of experience understanding how public school thinks about special needs kiddos. I did a lot of helping people with IEPs and doing advocacy work for them in the public school. So I'm familiar with a lot of the language of IEPs. So one of the things that I did in my position was to help create documents so that we can answer the need to submit a plan and have progress reports. We created documents to do that so that parents no longer have to do that. And I used part of that background in order to know the language and what they're looking for in order to help create those documents along with Homeschool Legal Defense, which I really am thankful for them. Mm-hmm. They were absolutely a gem in helping me accomplish that.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of my background and where I come from and how I got passionate. And I switched from public school and not really being satisfied to, okay, now I'm going to homeschool. And when I started doing that, I realized, oh, this is a fit. This is perfect. I can really focus on my kids and give them what they need, especially my autistic daughter. So once I got into that, I think God put me in the right place for the experience I needed in the background, but it was very clear that I should be in the homeschool area. That's where I fit. So I'm very glad that I ended up and had that experience.
It's really fun sometimes to think back to the way that God prepares you for homeschooling, because I worked in a one-room schoolhouse at a Hutterite colony before I began homeschooling, and that really helped me see how you could. There was just a really great teacher there, and she would let the kids, just go. If they were really good in math, they could just keep going. And anyway, I just think it's really neat how God uses those experiences to get you ready.
I have a spiritual walk where many years ago I was dealing with terrible health. Some of you are aware that I deal with cancer and live with that. That affects, sometimes I'm functional and I'm not. But at a time when I was really struggling with my faith, because of going through so many things. We were living in housing at the time because we were so broke from all my medical. This was before we got the wonderful Habitat house. Our finances were better. It was a really rough time. And, if you walk in faith when things are rough, that is the good testament of your faith. I truly believe that. And I was doing a study with my best girlfriends on the prayer of Jabez at the time. And that really impacted me. And I remember walking and praying and saying, Lord, use me as you will. And I remember, be very careful when you pray that prayer because God really listens to that.
Right.
So most of my Christian friends, my taking off more in my faith, and my walk with doing the special needs all took off. We got the Habitat house, we got security, and suddenly I was able to do all these things that I wanted to do. Start a local homeschool group, help the state, all of that. So I really do feel like God put me where he needed me at the time to help those who needed it. And so I take that very seriously as a passion, that it's something I should be doing. So I got a little, but yeah.
Right. So I did want to ask you about one thing, Lori, and I didn't talk about this before we talked about what we were going to talk about in here. But one statistic that I read recently was that a lot of, people who work in special needs in the public school are really happy if they get to spend just a very small amount of one-on-one time with a child that has special needs. And I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about why homeschooling is a good choice for kids with special needs, because that one-on-one time is so important.
Yeah. Some of the questions that I prepped for later is going to address a little of this. But one of the things that I tell parents, especially when they're contemplating pulling them out, there's always this sense of, well, oh my goodness, it's a scary enough for a parent when it's a child that's neurotypical to pull them out of school and think, okay, I'm going to do this. Then when you add in the needs of someone who has social skill issues, problems with retention, those kind of things, they're really scared that, can I do this myself personally? And there really is an accountability in your mind of, okay, I'm taking this on. And that's a lot scarier for a special needs parent than it is for a neurotypical child's parents. And I always tell them that no one is going to care as much as you do about the outcomes for this child. And the one-on-one tutoring that you're going to give this child, and the focus where your only goal is watching to see what is causing them progress and what's holding them back.
Right.
And the ability to flexibly change curriculum if something doesn't work. You're already miles ahead of what the public school has time for.
Right.
Because if you are in a classroom with 15 some kids, if your child is integrated into the classroom, they do not have time to follow through on a behavior management program.
Sure.
They don't have the time to one-on-one correct that child over and over again. If you're doing one-on-one tutoring, it's much easier for you to keep tabs on where are their weaknesses,
right,
or their strengths, and are they having a rough day? We can take a break now. When you're in a public school setting, it's much more difficult for them to manage those behaviors and find those periods where the children are in a good place to work with them. So your success rate goes higher. It really does. I rarely ever have a parent that I talk to that if I check back in 6 months later, that there hasn't been an increase in a gain in that child's functional level. And there's always that period where they're calming down from coming out of school. And just that alone, some of these kids have such issues with anxiety and stress that just pulling them out of that environment, they calm down and their brain is more open to learning. So I rarely have found a situation where a parent cares enough to pull their child out that it isn't a more proactive, better situation for the child.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. Yep.
Yeah. So Lori does a lot of really hard work for our association. She takes a lot of phone calls that are really tricky. And I just wanted her to talk a little bit about that, if you wanted to talk about that. And now Lori, I told her maybe frequently asked questions that she gets or issues that she continually comes up against that we could talk about. So,
well, let me talk a little bit about what I do with the districts, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of my goals for what I do in the position. I created my goals myself, but you guys are great. You just let me run with it and do what I want, which is lovely.
Great. Well, you're doing a great job, so you keep on it.
Yes. The advocacy piece, basically what I do is, and I don't even want to say that, I teach the parent to be an advocate for themselves. If they're dealing with a district, I give them a basic understanding of the law with the clear definition that I am not an attorney. Like, I always joke and tease, it's the first comment I make is, I am not an attorney.
Right.
You are the parent and teacher of your homeschool and the principal. You make final decisions on your interpretation of what the homeschool law is. And as we know, our homeschool law is fun right now. So we've had to make little changes for so many years that at some point a new concise bill, if we can get it through without a problem, would be lovely, but that's also dangerous. So right now we're living with what we have, but that does cause conflict sometimes with districts, especially when I have parents that are pulling children out from public going into homeschooling. We have no consistent response from any single district. Every district gives me a different answer. Some want us to sign off and say that we're not responsible for any special needs requirements for you anymore, which freaks some of my parents out because they have to sign a document, which most of the time it's actually easier when they do that because they don't call and ask questions anymore. They tend to leave you alone. So as a rule, I don't really have a problem with those documents. Plus, if they were to put them back in public, they have to, by law, they're required to create an IEP for a student anyway. So they could turn right back in if they had to. Not that I encourage that, but they could.
Right.
And most of the conflicts we have are when we have someone who's not as familiar with the law or they're questioning. In some cases, they don't feel, in their opinion, that the parent is capable of doing this. I don't know why I'm choosing homeschooling. I'll get that kind of comment, and I'll explain that my job is not to make a judgment on someone's capability. My job is to simply tell them, here's tools you can use, here's the law, and you can do this yourself. And a lot of times the main thing I do with the districts is remind them that this is the letter of the law, and this is what it says. And we have to submit a plan, which is paperwork I've created, and we have to roughly have to submit a progress report. It's a little unclear in our law whether that is required, but for good measure to protect our parents, I suggest they do that anyway. Just so that if ever I'm in a courtroom and I had to testify on behalf of someone, I can say to the best of their ability, they answered the current law that we have. So that's why I created the documents that I did. But most of the time, if I have a conflict with a district, it's either they're questioning whether they're going to provide all the same services that they had in the public school. So I'll advise the parent that if you say you're getting speech therapy in public school and you didn't graduate out of that, I would suggest that you find speech therapy to replace it in your home for now, so that you can say you're meeting that need. Same with any other therapy that they're getting.
Right.
In some cases, it's not needed because what was causing a lot of the issues was anxiety from the amount of social going on in the school. And when the kids come home, they don't have those issues.
Right.
So it really varies. And sometimes we're just creating an IEP or a student service plan for homeschool because we want to make sure that they have access to services. For instance, Voc Rehab requires some form of a public school IEP or a homeschool student service plan in order to access their services. You have to show, and you have to have something from your doctor that says you have that. So sometimes I advise parents, even if they're not receiving any therapies, to still fill out the forms because they may need access to job shadowing from Voc Rehab or other skills that their child might need when they're a teenager or in other times.
Help them get special services in college too, can it, Lori?
And in college, yes. Yep. My own son has insomnia and has some sleepwalking issues. And we didn't feel it was fair for him to have a neighbor that he's standing over in the middle of the night and looking at them. I think most kids would be pretty unsure about that. So we were able to, because of his IEP or in our student service plan, I had stated the insomnia. I was actually able, along with a note from the doctor, to get accommodation from the school.
Right.
So we pay half rate for the room, but it's actually covered the rest by federal funds because we have that in place.
Right.
Don't think that just because your child is graduating that you should close that out because you may need it in college too. Also, accommodation. When my oldest daughter went to college, and by the way, I have permission from all my children to share their stories. I always clear it before I do to be polite. She's the autistic gifted one. She has access to a program called TRIO when she was at college because of us using our student service plan.
Yeah.
And she could at any time, if she forgot her special calculator for math, she was in high-end math, she
Mm-hmm.
could go in there and borrow theirs. They had private tutoring. They had places where you could go and take your tests privately, not in a classroom with other kids. So don't rule out that those things are valuable later on down the road, because they truly can be. Even if you're not listing services you're getting, sometimes having that is valuable.
Right.
So, okay. And getting into my number one job that I think I have with most of it with my thing is parents. Talking to parents one-on-one. It's also the favorite part of my job. I
Mm-hmm.
much prefer to talk to a parent than an administrator. They're
Yeah.
very nice. But that's the truth. Yeah. When I talk with parents, sometimes it's literally they're crying on the phone and my kids know and they hand the phone to me and they say, "Mom, it's for you," which
Mm-hmm.
isn't funny, but in a way it kind of is, because my kids are
Right.
so used to it after so many years that they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Here, Mom, it's for you."
Right.
And most of what I do is convince parents that they have more ability than they think they do, because usually it's just anxiety over
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they're trying to homeschool a special needs child.
Right.
And we talk about the legal paperwork. We talk about picking curriculum. I have one really cute young man who just decided that, and Mom gave me permission to share this, that naked was the way to learn. He just didn't
Okay.
want to come to the table
Oh no.
dressed ever. We spent a good week working on behavior modification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this young man would get over that little issue and Mom could get her day started, which was
Right.
hilariously funny. So I actually love some of those calls because they make me giggle when I get off the phone. Kids are
Right.
hilariously funny.
Mm-hmm.
And kids that are not neurotypical, I run the gamut from kids that have severe learning impairments to kids that are gifted and talented. And some of them are just funny, naughty little kids that it's fun to hear some of their creative ways that they're running the world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's fun to me to help those parents sometimes to navigate and figure out, okay, how can we make this not as big a deal and get around it and get them back to learning and doing what they're doing. So
Right.
I love troubleshooting. I enjoy those stories probably the most. So that's my number one area is parents, helping parents on calls. And that's what I do the most. And I honestly love it too, because when my health is limiting, I can still do that and feel valuable. So I really appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
great for me. As far as other goals, my second most important goal at this point with my job is connections. I think
Mm-hmm.
parents are feeling extremely isolated. In
Mm-hmm.
our state, we have such a rural communities, and then you are homeschoolers to boot, so that's an even smaller community within that.
Right.
Sometimes if you don't have those resources already built up of grandparents and friends and people that you rely on to get that stress out, you feel very alone.
Right.
Especially some of these kids that are impaired to the point that trying to get respite care is almost impossible. I've actually done respite care for parents. I can tell you it's very difficult when you have a child that may act violently out or isolates or does something that's not neurotypical behavior. That scares babysitters. They don't want to do that.
Right.
I myself had trouble finding a babysitter for my daughter for the
Mm-hmm.
first 6 years of her life. It was almost impossible. So I remember how hard that was.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the goals, the big goals that I have, I love the connection we have at conference. And I
Mm-hmm.
love the fact that our parents get to hang out, meet each other. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been some really great long-term friendships that
Mm-hmm.
have happened there. But I feel like the rest of the year, there's not enough connection for these parents.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my hopeful goals, and we're still looking for tech help on this. And so if anyone out there has that ability, we would
Right.
love to create a forum, a way for parents to log in during the day and chat and talk to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and have the ability to, if you have autism or ADHD, an area where you can go to talk about that and meet other parents dealing with the same disorder or issue. So
Mm-hmm.
that's that would be one of my praise goals I would love to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to see if we can make it work.
Right.
Um, the other issues that I look at, besides that community building between parents, is trying to build relationships with legislators. And of course, NDHSA does this anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And Teresa and some of the ladies are very connected and
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of the legislators. Sometimes I wish I lived in Bismarck so it'd be easier to make those connections.
Yeah.
But I try as much as I can that whenever a legislator or someone of that nature or superintendent, I get a lot of those calls,
Mm-hmm.
calls me and wants to know, can you please explain to me how the homeschool law works?
Mm-hmm.
And after I'm done giggling that it's an administrator calling me, I
Mm-hmm.
will say, well, as long as you know the hat that I'm wearing, that I'm with NDHSA, I will gladly give you my views on the
Mm-hmm.
homeschool law. And so I love that education piece to those that are in leadership. I've also had politicians that have called me and literally just asked, can you explain to me how you do this? What is homeschooling?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they do this? He said, I don't understand. I've never been exposed to this. I love those kind of calls because then when it comes time for a vote on something down the road, they've had one-on-one contact with someone and they take it more seriously than just it's another bill that comes up.
Right.
So any chance I have for that or public speaking, or I love that opportunity because you reach so many people doing
Yep.
that. Great idea. And NDHSA does most of that work, and thank goodness for it. But that is
Yeah.
one thing I try to be involved in if I can.
We
Yeah.
try to stay as involved as possible in the legislative process, but the Bismarck support group does a really good job of staying
Yes, they
involved,
do. Yes.
and
But I do love that.
they
And I
show
do, there even, go ahead.
nothing. Go ahead, Lori.
Oh, I've reached out too because I work for the whole state, not just my area.
Mm-hmm.
There's times where I've reached out to local small groups.
Mm-hmm.
I've either gone down and spoken at one of their like welcome to homeschool meetings, that kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always open to do that if you want to do that, or if you want to talk about. Let me give a good example. In the gym classes when I was running them locally, as part of our homeschool group, we used to have a time where we would bring hula hoops into the classroom. I
Mm-hmm.
seem to have an autism child every year. There seemed to always be one little lovely kiddo who
Mm-hmm.
had some of those struggles. Okay. So what I started doing is I would bring the hula hoops in, all the kids would wear their hula hoops, and I would explain that everybody has a bubble. Your bubble might be bigger or smaller than mine. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to learn to respect those bubbles. And if you don't like someone, if they're too into your bubble, you
Mm-hmm.
need to say that. And because I give those kids a visual aid to understand how these children think,
Mm-hmm.
it helps them to use the words to say, hey, Timmy, I don't like that. You're touching me too much. You're in my bubble. So it
Mm-hmm.
made the ability to bring kids with special needs into our group that much easier. I
Mm-hmm.
gave the kids the language of how to deal with that. So
Right.
if you have something in a local group where you'd like me to come in and do something with the kids, or I have another example of paper plates over the faces to help
Mm-hmm.
them understand that some kids can't read faces and body language. So you need
Mm-hmm.
to use words. I have something I do with younger kids on that level. I'd be
Mm-hmm.
more than willing to come in and speak and share that with anyone in one of the small towns or wherever that would like that help. I think
Right.
it's useful. And it's made the kids in our group very aware and very good at understanding how to communicate with kiddos with challenges, which is awesome. I like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Right.
that's something I find important to try to help out my other districts. I'd like
Mm-hmm.
to do way more of that. So
Okay.
if you're watching this, call me.
Right.
Okay. And then something that's a little newer that I'm doing now, I've gone once already and I'm going to go again, is the Alliance Conference on the
Mm-hmm.
national level. I
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really enjoyed it. It was
Mm-hmm.
great. And I'm going to Texas here shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And last year it was awesome. I got to do a workshop on teaching leaders on how to deal with calls from parents. So it
Mm-hmm.
was really nice to just answer questions on, if a parent calls with this issue, how do I address that?
Mm-hmm.
And I also gave a lot of cautions in terms of make sure that you reiterate you're not a lawyer.
Right.
You're giving a lot of opinions. Always express that this is your opinion based on experience. Do
Mm-hmm.
not act like a lawyer because we aren't lawyers, and we need to be careful of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really fun to answer some of those questions, and I can see that there's a huge need for that on the
Mm-hmm.
national level.
Mm-hmm.
So before I even connected with Alliance, I had approached them to see if they knew of a group that was doing like a Zoom call online that would reach all the states for
Mm-hmm.
special needs leadership in each state for homeschooling. And I thought before I build a new arc, I'll see if somebody else had already done it.
Right.
Yeah. And in the course of contacting Alliance, they said, this is great. We've been praying for somebody to come along that will
Mm-hmm.
help fill this need. Why don't you come work with us too? And I said, well, let me ask my leadership. You
Mm-hmm.
guys were awesome. Let me do that. So I've been working with Stacey Morgan on the national level,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm helping with those workshops We're also doing the online Zoom calls now. And on average, we have about 16 states that participate at any given time on our calls. And we use a topic each night on autism, ADD, mental health issues, etc. And all of us share resources of what we give to our parents, books, videos, services that we've used, ideas for handling those issues. I found it really invaluable. I now have a dyslexia person I can call on speed dial, which is great.
Great.
If I have a question. Just some of the things and the ideas I've gotten from there are wonderful. And I think it's helping. The fact that we're all working together makes us all better leaders in our states.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. Yeah. So that was kind of a dream accomplished. I was very happy about that. Yeah. And I think, and between Stacy and I, we have a whole lot of health issues. So we kind of joke that between us, we each half a person. We're together, we maybe make one solid volunteer. So we're making it work. Yeah. We're making it work this year. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we'll continue that down the road, but right now it is very successful. And I appreciate Alliance being a partner to us in doing that.
Yes.
And running with my idea. That was awesome. Yeah. So, also at our state conference, which is always awesome.
Oh, yes, I agree.
You guys have been great in that now I have a booth. Before I was always finding a quiet corner or a place at the door if they had a child that was too busy. It's really nice having a booth now so you can find me easily. Come on over and sign up if you want to sit and talk to me if I'm busy with another parent. And I'll sit down and talk to you. And hopefully by day 3, if I'm there 2-3 days, I still have a voice.
Right.
Sometimes it goes by the end of it.
Right.
It's a lot of fun to me to just sit down and cover a host of subjects. Even if you don't have a special needs child, I have no problem sitting down and just talking about behavior issues, or maybe you're struggling in just reading or math. If I have a suggestion, I'll offer it to you.
Right.
But again, our interests color our opinions. So I laugh because I know I recommend a lot of the same curriculum over and over again because they meet certain needs. I'm sure there's more and more wonderful things out there, and I'm trying to familiarize myself always with curriculum. But it's more teaching parents the ability to discern what their child needs and then finding out what curriculums will fit that need. I'm always emphasizing that curriculum are tools.
Yes.
Yep.
Your tools and not your master. That's what I'm always saying as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to share that something new I'm doing this year. These are activity bags that I've created. Okay. And they're going to have like a book that's age appropriate. Oh, it doesn't like here. There you go.
You can see it now.
And there's going to be little lovely extras in there. So I'm going to basically mark them from choking hazard, not choking hazard kind of thing. So you can have some discernment as a parent and decide. But I'll be checking those out from my booth this year. I wanted something nice to have at the booth, I thought.
Yeah.
You can check them out, and it'll help keep kids busy that maybe can't handle going to the daycare or the activities for kids. I know some of my parents have to bring their kids in a stroller, whatever, and try to attend because it just doesn't fit for them to go into care.
Right.
Health reasons or whatever. So I was trying to find something that would help keep them preoccupied at the back of the room to keep things quieter for our podcasts or recordings and to help them entertain their kids. So no charge for this. Just come to the booth, check one out, mark the number down, and then I'll know you have it. And if you change your mind and they're bored in an hour, come back and borrow another one. The idea is to make it smoother for our parents to attend conference.
Yes.
So, and that was a great idea. I got off the Alliance Zoom calls. So, hey.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do. Yeah.
Sorry, just to remind everybody at the convention, Lori will be there. She'll have a booth. It'll most likely be right next to or right behind the NDHSA booth, depending on how our vendor hall gets set up. You'll be able to find her in our book, in the where all of our booths are located. You'll be able to easily figure out where she's at. You can sign up for private conversations with Lori. That information will be on our website when all of our convention information gets uploaded to sign up for a private meeting with her. We also do a special needs get together over lunchtime.
I was going to bring that up. Yep.
It's a bring your own lunch and come and visit type of thing. You usually have to have a pre-ordered lunch because the venues never let us bring our own food in. But or you can just go sit there and visit and not eat until later. It's up to you. But it's a good time of networking. Lori will be there just talking about different things, and she has forms there, and we sometimes have other special needs speakers there to answer your questions.
Yep. Last year I did community building was my topic. And I think prior to that, I had 2 gals there that provide different therapy services, and I had them talk about what they did. We've also had someone talk about adopting and foster care with special needs. So we've had various topics.
Yep.
So we do that at conference. And by the way, if the booth is too distracting, if you have a child with sensory issues and that's too much, sign up with me, come to the booth. We'll go find a corner. We'll find a quiet place. So the convenience of the booth is you can find me, because I had people that were struggling to find me. I would have other people wave me down and go, so-and-so is looking for you. So this is convenient. So I appreciate that.
Yes, I don't know. Sometimes we just have limited vendor space, but we don't this year have much of a restriction. So it'll be nice for you to have your own booth. And then also Lori will be doing at least 1 session, possibly 2 at the convention this year. So
I have 1 workshop already planned out that is going to be on character training and behavioral management. I may tweak the name and some of the info, but I'm really passionate about kind of like preventative medicine, preventative behavior training.
Sure.
I really believe that the more you do that with kids when they're younger, and you tell them the expectation of, here's what I'm asking you to do. This is what perseverance is. This is what kindness is. If you don't explain those things, I think you're asking a lot to make a child do those things. I'm big on preemptively training them. I'm also really big on correcting through rewards rather than negativity, because especially kids that are not neurotypical, they hear the word no, 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 no all the time. And they really take a hit to their self-esteem. There's some really strong statistics out there that if you have certain issues, especially social emotional related, that by the time you hit 3rd, 4th grade, it's a really high correlation with depression.
Really?
So it's really important that we try to find ways that reinforce good character building and positive habit building rather than negativity, because it really does affect their minds.
Right.
It affects their ability to look at the world in a positive way. And you and I know that when kids aren't feeling positive or comfortable, they shut down.
Right.
Their brains aren't open and they don't learn and they're not elastic.
Well, right. That's part of what really hinders their learning in a public school environment, if they're being bullied or, whatever the case may be, or they're having all this anxiety. And that's something we hope to remove to a great degree at home. So
I have permission to share, but I have a mama with a child that is on the autism spectrum. He's extremely sensory sensitive. So he's not necessarily, he was having 1 incident of bullying, but the rest was just so much stimulus always in the classroom. So, if you think of it, if you're the kind of person that likes to study with quiet and someone was forcing you to keep the radio in the background playing all the time, that's what these children feel like. So and then the anxiety of, they don't think I'm doing well enough. People are putting me down. That severely affects a child's psychology. So that's why I so frequently see a bump in their function and ability level within 6 months of coming home. And this is just my personal opinion, but when I follow up and I call my parents, I'm always like, yep, here we go. They've calmed down. They're focusing. They're gaining. And it makes sense, because when you have kids in abuse situations, when they get into foster care, if they're calmed down, it takes a while before they get out of that. And I'm not saying that public school is all abuse. I am not saying that.
Right.
But in situations where it's not a fit for a child, coming home into a homeschool situation does frequently improve the outcomes for the child. I see it over and over again. Yeah. I have a couple of commonly asked questions that parents give me that I thought I'd answer into. And some of this, we actually hit a little of it, but
great.
One of the big ones is, how do I know I'm doing enough? I get that one all, and it doesn't matter whether they've got a neurotypical child or not neurotypical. I get this question from all parents.
Yep.
And I always laugh and I go, If you think the public school doesn't have any gaps, let me assure you they do.
Right.
Yeah, and there's plenty of times where teachers don't finish a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
There's always in a classroom, there's a graph of function level. You've got
Mm-hmm.
kids that are high achieving, middle range, and those that aren't.
Right.
So, school is no perfect recipe that things are always going to go well.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel like the one-on-one, which is like private tutoring that they get from homeschooling, even if it's you with several of your children, those times when you're teaching a harder subject like math and reading, where you're monitoring one-on-one and
Mm-hmm.
you're evaluating, oh, they're weak on their times tables. Oh, they're mixing up, they're forgetting to reduce on fractions. You're going to see those little details that
Mm-hmm.
might be missed on homework situations.
Mm-hmm.
Because the teacher will mark something wrong, but that doesn't necessarily tell the student, here's what you're missing consistently.
Right.
Here's what you need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
You know? One of my favorite things about a math called teaching textbooks, which I'm sure most people are familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
is I love the feature where if you get something wrong, it'll say, "Would you like to try it again?"
Right.
And sometimes, yeah, and sometimes it'll say you forgot to reduce
Right.
that common error. So it
Mm-hmm.
points it out. And then if they still can't get it right, it literally shows them step by step,
Yep.
work that problem through. And that was for my child that was autistic that really wanted to work independently,
Mm-hmm.
she loved that because she didn't have to come running to me.
Yep.
She had chances to fix her mistake. And when she was frustrated, she got a solution because
Yes.
she's
Mm-hmm.
not having a clear answer. So
Right.
that's a curriculum I love to recommend frequently.
I do
Just
too. Yeah.
yeah, and it's simple to use in most
Mm-hmm.
cases.
Mm-hmm.
But that one-on-one feedback, either through the parent or specialized curriculum, makes a
Mm-hmm.
huge difference in the outcomes for children.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we have the flexibility. Most public schools are locked into a certain curriculum. Their
Mm-hmm.
school buys into that, and they have to stick with it for the whole year. Well, if
Yes.
you can support your child's learning style, you're going to be a couple weeks in and realize, oh, this is really not working for us. You have
Mm-hmm.
the right to change it. To
Mm-hmm.
flat out, I have done that. And I always tell parents too, especially in that first year, you are not going to get it all right.
Right.
You're probably going to change curriculum at least once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
And, even if you think, okay, I've got this all covered, I bought that box curriculum. Okay, and this is my bias coming to play because I'm not a fan of box curriculum.
Right.
But, you think, oh, it's all laid out. It's going to be so simple. I'll know exactly what I'm supposed to do. You
Mm-hmm.
get about a month in and you're like, it's so much writing.
Right.
The reading is too high for them. They're frustrated. They hate it.
Mm-hmm.
We have the flexibility to say, this isn't working. We're going to make a change.
Right.
So, yeah. And you can really tailor things. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you. That leads to the second question. How to pick curriculum for a special needs child. And I get that all the time too. Well, there's no perfect curriculum. I'm going to say that first. There's not a curriculum that's going to say, this is perfect for ADD. That
Mm-hmm.
does not exist.
Right.
We need to look at curriculum like curriculum are tools.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean that you could use something, but you may need to supplement it. You
Mm-hmm.
may need to change how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
If it has too much writing, you may need to only take 2 out of the 5 problems,
Right.
have them work on that. Maybe you do things verbally out loud and
Right.
do it that way. Because remember, I think you have to keep the focus on what is the goal we're trying to meet?
Mm-hmm.
What skill are we trying to impart to them right now?
Right.
What's the most important part here?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to mention that I'm an eclectic homeschooler, so that's my bias. I see a box curriculum and I go, ooh, it's not. But that's my personality.
Sure.
I'm very particular and I
Mm-hmm.
know what I like. So to me, I would rather handpick one by one and put it together. But
That's
that's
what
my
I do too, but
yeah. Not everybody wants to do it that way, and that is a-okay. But
it's okay. Yep.
bias. So you know my bias, okay?
Uh-huh.
When I'm eclectic like that, I will pick literally one curriculum. So like when I was teaching writing, all
Mm-hmm.
3 of my kids have horrible penmanship. No
Okay.
matter how much I tried, their
Mm-hmm.
penmanship has always been an issue. Okay, fine
Mm-hmm.
motor for some reason, and so I have used actually handwriting without tears.
Yes.
I love that program, And the reason I chose it is because it has what's called multiple modalities.
Yes.
You're learning something more than one way. We're saying it, we're thinking it, we're writing it, or sometimes touching it. It's just done in a way that the more we do different ways of teaching, the more it sticks in their brain. So I can recommend Handwriting Without Tears, but it was meeting the special needs of just my child.
Sure.
Your child may have a different way of learning it.
Right.
The computer video program works better for them. So there's no perfect curriculum. There's sitting down and assessing, what are my child's challenges? How do they learn best? Let's pick something that fits that need. And part of what I do when I have conversations with parents is I'll ask them, how do they learn? What are they struggling with? With reading, my first question is always, when's the last time they got their glasses checked?
Sure.
Yeah. And I'll also watch to see when they're reading, do their eyes dart off the page? Do we have possible ADD going on? Yeah. Or dyslexia or something. So you have to really watch and see and then ask those questions. And if you are feeling overwhelmed with that, I don't know everything. I don't pretend to know everything, but I'm familiar with a lot of things. You can call me and I'll ask you some pointed questions and maybe I can lead you in a direction. Even if you don't use a different curriculum, I might be able to hint to you a different way to use it so it's more effective with your child, or to add something in as a supplement. Like one of my favorite recommendations is Right Start Math. They have math card games kit. They have these wonderful card games that support all the math functions. So if you're struggling with fractions or something, they have a game for that. I'm a big believer that reading is, reading your book and practicing that for reading is the same as games are for math. It really does improve those skills. So if you're stuck on something and you don't know quite how to work around it, call me and see if I can help with that. That's part of what I do, and I really appreciate that one-on-one. And again, I may not tell you to get a different curriculum. I may show you a different way to approach it, which I think matters. So, trying to think and one other big point with curriculum. Remember what your goal is. If you're teaching history, if your child is having a hard time with writing or reading things, now is maybe not the time to emphasize those skills. Let's focus on the goal, which is ancient civilization for history, or understanding why we wrote the Declaration of Independence. Focus on the goal of what you want them to take away. Maybe that is not the time to work on their writing and their reading. Have planned times for that as part of their curriculum, but keep it maybe separate from their history and their science. Because you want them to have a sense of love of learning. And sometimes when you keep using their struggling area over and over and over again, they get to the point where they hate school. So it's important to not focus on that too much. So anyway, and then I also wanted to suggest that if you are struggling with something, this gets into my final question here. How do I find therapies for my children? I get that all the time, and we are such an incredibly rural state that we have very few options. I cannot in good conscience tell my parents never use public school resources, even though it's never my first choice. Because in some communities, they literally are the only option for our parents to get speech or something. I am trying very hard to find alternatives for that. But one of the things I know now is there's a lot of therapy things that are available online. Speech is one of them. So one of the ideas I ran by Amber that I'm going to hopefully try to start working on is creating a list of resources in every community, and also trying to find some online resources that we can offer to our parents, because as much as that therapy is important, I'm never going to be the one to say you should absolutely use public school services. But those are not going to come out of my mouth, those words. Because we need to always be aware that they're court-mandated reporters, and they're important. What they consider important for our children, it may not be the same goals that we have. For the protection of our children, you'll never hear that coming out of my mouth. But at the same time, if there are no other options available, I understand why some parents are seeking those services out. Yeah. So if I can help you navigate that, I have done that and I will. But do not try to find out, talk to your local community. In your community, what do you have there? Other homeschoolers there are already working through some of those issues. Find out Are they driving half an hour away to another city? And
Right.
are there services there? Find out what other locals are using. Get a
Mm-hmm.
referral from your doctor. They're going to know who's providing services in the community. See if they have it. In some cases, you need that referral anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Just do basic cold calls. That works too.
Right.
And then also too, if you're working on like social skills, like I did this with my daughter. I was the Girl Scout mom for a couple of years there. I formed a play group at the park at one
Mm-hmm.
point when she was a preschooler for the express purpose that I needed her to have opportunities to work
Right.
on her social skills, particularly with her autism. So I
Mm-hmm.
needed scenarios where we could have a problem so that I could
Right.
come back later and say, here's a better way to deal with this. So
Mm-hmm.
don't rule out the idea of getting together with your other homeschoolers. I
Mm-hmm.
talked about this in community building last year in our workshop, our special needs luncheon,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of community building. So consider that if you have a special needs child, creating your own little community gives you a chance to set some of those goals and work on that. And if you're not sure what kind of social skills should I be working on, I did a
Mm-hmm.
workshop on that last year, and
Right.
you can more than call me, and I'll talk you through some of those examples of
Right.
ways
And
to
you
work
can
with your
you can
kids.
still purchase that recording too on the
Oh,
alliancerecordings.com. You can still buy that session.
great, yeah. So, but any of those issues, I love handling those. To me, they're fun. So I enjoy the challenge. So
Sure.
please call me if you have a question. If I don't have an answer, I'll be honest and I'll tell you that, but I'll try to come up with some way. If nothing else, I'll pray with you and hopefully help you feel a little better. So,
Right. And I think something that you hit on over and over again, Lori, and something that I'll reiterate is how important community is for special needs parents. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need a community, to me anyway, of all parents who have autistic children. It just means that you have to have, you need to try to seek out somebody that can talk to you and pray with you and like listen. That, a lot of times you just need somebody to listen to you. And this is the problem that I'm having, and it's so frustrating. And maybe they're not going to give you a solution, but at least you had an opportunity to say it out loud. I don't not maybe not all women are that way, but that is the way that I am. I need to say it out
I
loud
am.
to somebody. It helps me
Yeah.
work through it in my mind. And we can be there for each other, and we can be a support system for each other. And I know that there are some rural communities who don't have a support group. I would encourage you to start one. If your
And we have
community,
Zoom. We have Zoom these days.
right,
Find a couple of friends, connect, and have regular times you touch base with them. Yeah.
right, right.
Yep. The
So,
joy
and
of
yes,
technology.
reach out to us at the office, reach out to Lori. All the information to reach out to Lori or the NDHSA office is online. It's on our website, and I will link it in this podcast episode. One thing that I think Lori's going to talk about yet too is just the forms that she put together. And
Yeah.
I will also link those in the description too, so that people can pull those up easily.
I won't go through all the details of filling out every single line because that would go quite a while.
Right.
But basically, there's the statement of intent. Everybody fills that out. That says, I'm a homeschooler. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a child that is not neurotypical or has social challenges or in some way needs accommodation and you want to denote that to the office, then you're going to fill out a form called Student Services. Let me make sure I get the exact title. Student Services for Homeschool Plan.
Mm-hmm.
It basically, that says, I'm a homeschooler with a special needs child, and this is me submitting my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not difficult to fill out. I made it incredibly simple for a reason. You're going to put in there each therapy that your child is receiving. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing speech, you're going to put speech, and it'll say will be provided by, and you can fill in West River or whichever service is being provided, whoever's providing that service. Mm-hmm. And do that for each of your therapies. For OT, PT, speech, do a separate line for each of them. Mm-hmm. And then that is under the special needs heading on the North Dakota Homeschool Association website. Go click on special needs. It'll open up. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you see me. But if you stay at the top, you'll hit the pop out, and the two forms are there, and you can print those off. Mm-hmm. And if you scroll down to the second form, it says progress report. Mm-hmm. That one has to go in on 3 specific dates, and those dates are in parentheses up in the left-hand corner on that form. And all that is if you have a public school background and you're familiar with IEPs, It's basically the meetings they have during the year to check in and say, how are we doing? What's our progress? Mm-hmm. So again, we're going to fill out the information on any therapies that our kids are being provided. Mm-hmm. If you aren't and you just want to say that they have a service plan, you just put non-applicable in that section. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to also attach a one-page summary from each of your providers. So if you're getting speech, PT, and OT, mm-hmm. you're going to need a one-page summary from each of them. Mm-hmm. And they have to have that for insurance, so they always have it. Mm-hmm. And it just says, here's the goals we've been working on, here's their progress. Mm-hmm. And that satisfies that reporting need of saying, hey, we're checking in. Mm-hmm. And then there's one piece on the bottom that's pretty interesting where it says, child is making adequate progress, or child is maintaining based on academic ability. Mm-hmm. And this is that IEP background I have. Those are worded the same way that they do when they're writing IEPs in the public school. Mm-hmm. That first option is for a child that is performing neurotypically for their age. The second option is for kids that are below grade level, mm-hmm. that for whatever reason, be IQ, be it focus issues, whatever, is unable to function at grade level. Mm-hmm. And all the reason we're doing that is to simply acknowledge that we know they're not grade level. Mm-hmm. Our goals are different for this child. It might be maintaining what we've taught them and hoping for progress. Mm-hmm. It depends on the severeness of the issue.
Right.
But we want to acknowledge that for your protection, to say that you're acknowledging this child has challenges and is not functional on grade level. And it's the same language that the public schools use to acknowledge that as well. So it's a protection for us. And they understand the language, so they didn't question it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then one other thing that I run into all the time, mm-hmm. our law in North Dakota is a little ambiguous. We've, again, made all these incremental changes, mm-hmm. and especially with the no testing piece requirement.
That's what I was going to bring up.
There is a piece in our law that states if they fall below the 30th percentile, then there's this advisory committee, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And that's when a progress report piece comes in.
Right.
But now that we don't require test scores in, we can say that technically we don't have to do that anymore because we don't have to hand in test results. Mm-hmm. But because it's a gray area in our law, and to be abundantly careful and protective for my mm-hmm. parents, I tell them to hand in this progress report, just simply so that we're acknowledging we know we have this special needs child, we have a plan in place, here's our progress. Mm-hmm. If we're in charge of our own special service plan, we're running our own IEP, I want to make sure that we're showing that we're keeping track of that.
Right.
And that's what that progress report is. So there's some question ambiguity as to whether it's even needed, but mm-hmm. I thought better to be on the safe and sorry.
Right.
Then, so if somebody ever is challenged, we can say they have totally met the law to the letter as much as they could. We've addressed that need.
Right.
Yeah. So, but don't be surprised. The districts frequently have no idea what the homeschool law even states. Mm-hmm. And so I'll have parents hand in the progress report and they get blink, blink from the administrators. They're like, what is this? And I always tell them to say, this is me being abundantly cautious. Here you go. Please put this in my file.
Right, right.
Again, it's every parent's choice as to how they want to address the law. Mm-hmm. You could handwrite all of this and hand it in yourself. What mm-hmm. we did is create a way to streamline that, fill it in the form, so that the districts, I wanted them to get used to receiving the forms. Mm-hmm. So that they thought, I can check that box, the need's been met.
Right.
Yeah. So, but again, you always are the final decision, each family, on what you choose to do and how you answer that law. You are your own principal and administrator.
Right. So, something that we do maybe want to talk about, in the law, it says that we're required to do standardized testing at certain increments, but we now have the option to opt out of that. And we have in the past, and I think Lori agrees with this too, kind of advised, especially special needs parents to opt out of that requirement. If you want to test your kids, by all means, test them, get a standardized test them. This is just making it so that you don't have to turn that into the school and maybe end up in a little bit of a conundrum. What do we do here now?
You have to call me.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I just, maybe Lori wants to talk about that some more, but that is something that we have recommended in the past to continue to do. So
yeah. Every time I counsel a new parent, if they ask my opinion, I tell them, I would please ask you to not send in your test results. You are welcome to test your child yourself, but I
Right.
often tell them too, you're going to be surprised within 6 months of working with your child, you're going to be telling me what their issues are. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be a surprise to you what their function level is.
Right.
So if the testing helps you satisfy a family member
Mm-hmm.
or just for your own personal knowledge and you want to do it, that's
Right.
great. More
Right.
often than not, it's that doubting Thomas, one of the parents, and they're trying to meet the need of satisfying that other adult or
Right.
someone. But I rarely have parents that test unless they're one of those families that just I test every year that
Mm-hmm.
continue doing it once they've gotten going because they already know what their child's challenge is.
Right. That's just it.
Yeah.
Lori had mentioned this earlier. When you're working with a child one on one every single, school day, you can see where they're falling behind or where they're excelling quite
Yep.
easily. So, and if the point of testing is to gauge, where they're at, you already have a pretty good idea of that. So,
Yep. Agreed. So we've covered a whole lot of topics and questions, and I think I'm all exhausted out.
okay. So I just have one more thing,
Sure.
Lori. If you could just give a little bit of encouragement to a parent that is maybe they haven't even sent kids to public school, but they know they have a special needs learner. What would you say to that parent who's wondering, oh, do I have the capability to deal with this situation? Which I know we kind of already touched on that.
Yeah.
But if you just wanted to give them a little bit of encouragement, and also to the person who may be thinking, maybe I won't be sending my kid back because of this issue or that issue.
Yeah, I want to give the encouragement that, especially if you are a Christian, God gives you the need He will fill the need that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a period of grace when you do something new and there's a transition. And I tell my parents, you need to give yourself that grace
Right.
and learn from that experience so that you can be that better parent to them.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I really feel like most of the time when parents pull their kids out, God calls them to it. There's
Mm-hmm.
that little voice that keeps talking to them. That podcast that comes up that you weren't looking for that
Sure.
discusses homeschooling. That friend of a friend you run into and they go, oh, we homeschool. And you
Mm-hmm.
have that interesting conversation. Sometimes I think that prodding, that little voice is there. And
Mm-hmm.
it helps us to get to the point where we accept that's what
Right.
we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not alone. There's people that will talk to you, will help you and walk you through this.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to be a Superman or a Superwoman in order to do this. And special needs just means that you're going to pay a little bit more attention to how they learn and what they do, and maybe have to accommodate some of their physical challenges,
Right.
etc. But odds are you're already doing that in your home. If
Right.
you've got a child with those issues, you've already been learning how to accommodate them since they were little, if they've had these issues all their life.
Mm-hmm.
And you're always going to be the one person who cares the most about the outcomes for your child.
Right.
I mean, think about it. If you went out and picked a babysitter, which one are you going to pick? You're going to pick the one that you feel like gives the most personalized attention to your
Mm-hmm.
child and is paying attention to their needs. Well, if
Right.
I have to pick between you and the public school, I'm going to assume that you care way more about your child's accomplishments and needs. So you're
Right.
my better pick for that scenario. And I think if God calls you to it, you will walk through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I would totally agree with that. But I do know that there's very hard days.
Mm.
And that's when you really do need to reach out. And then one more thing I wanted to ask you, Lori, is
Yeah.
this is something that we struggled with when our special needs child was younger. That child required so much of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And we had other children who were neurotypical. So, I asked this to Temple Grandin's mom, actually, because I got to meet Temple Grandin in person once, and her mom conferenced in
Yeah.
and let people ask questions. And that's the question I asked her. How do you make sure that you're making those other kids feel like they're important too when you're pouring all this time into the person, the child that needs it? But does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. The first thing I would say is just because the child is neurotypical and requires more of your one-on-one and time,
Mm-hmm.
cannot drop the discipline piece with those kids too. And that may mean them learning that they have to have a quiet time during the day. Even if they're used to all that attention from you because of their special needs, you really do need to do the training if it's possible, where they have periods of time where they learn that right now you need to be self-entertaining and I need to focus on your siblings.
Right.
I had certain things in my closet for Lizzie because she was so autistic focused and then gifted on top of that. This is not a child that handled being bored well. It didn't go over well.
Right.
A lot of naughty things happened when she was bored. We'll leave it at that. And at that time, I was dealing with brand new twins.
Sure.
And so there were times, once they were school age, Lizzie had to be able to do her own thing, and I needed to be able to focus on the twins once they hit about preschool. Sure. And what we did is we had instilled times. I taught all my children times where I would give them 15, 20 minutes of my direct focus first. I would spend their one-on-one time, so I'd filled that need.
Right.
They don't have that attention from me, so they weren't hungry. I say there's lots of hunger. There's food hunger, there's attention hunger. And I learned that if you fill that need first, then when you make the ask of them, it's easy. So yes, you're going to have to manage the schedule of the child that has those issues. There's no way around that.
Right.
So I would give her a quiet time, and son, I would plan activities. I had things in my closet that were high interest, high focus for that child, and I only gave them during school time. I made sure that they were things that fabulous Gears kit come out of the closet only when I needed to work on phonics with the little young ones or something, my hardcore subjects that we needed to hit, right? And so those became a treat, and it was also part of our routine. We built it in. So I knew that every day when she did her quiet time, she didn't nap, but quiet time was when I would work with the younger ones on their tough subject. So that discipline is first, I have to say that. And it's really difficult sometimes for us to discipline our special needs kiddos because their attention needs have so outspoken their siblings.
Right.
They're used to that constant feedback from us and security blanket that we are to them. But it is really important that we teach them that you don't always have to be there.
Right.
Because they will not expand out the horizons if you are always their safety blanket. So as hard as it is, even if, especially kiddos that have allergy issues, etc., you have to find safe scenarios where you are distancing them from you. So they learn to be more self-soothing, self-controlling, so that you can have that. And that will help with that splitting time between siblings. The second thing I would say is I am very, very real with all my kids on what the differences are with their brains. In our house, we say we're just wired differently. That's how we express. And quirky really runs in my family. We have autistic gifted runs in my family. And if you don't find your passion, you will really suffer as an adult. I have a drug addicted brother, and I truly believe that he has autistic tendencies, but he also has addiction now. And part of that was because of some of those needs not being met when he was younger. So I'm very conscious of that with my children. And I really strive from the time they're little that they learn independent time where they're exploring things, where they're checking out passions and they're learning those things. So as a result of that, I've got my oldest daughter is kind of a computer guru, like her daddy. One of my twins is a music guru. He plays like 6 instruments, composes, and it was because he had the time to really explore those things.
Right.
And my one kiddo who is ill, so he's still working through health issues from COVID, but he is a math and science. He does these elaborate board games. He has one he's been building for 3 years. That he's planning on trying to sell. So, you let them pursue their passions. That helps to keep that focus. And then the other thing I would say is the structure in your home in terms of know what the cost is of the subject you're teaching. For some kids, just English is stressful for them because they cannot spell or they cannot read well. You know that the amount of energy it's going to cost them for that subject is more than it's going to cost them for, say, gym class. It's a difference in the cost. So understand what are the high cost subjects for each of your children and what is the best way that they learn those. If they need complete quiet in order to focus, then when you've got the other child or sibling with special needs having their quiet time is when to do that high cost subject. So plan ahead. And then the last thing I would say is grace. You do not have a typical household. Embrace it. don't pretend or try to meet someone's expectation, your mother-in-law or your family. Don't try to
Right.
meet that expectation. That is not who your child is. That's not who your family is. So if you have a day where that whole system breaks down, we have a joke in my house that when everything goes down the drain,
Mm-hmm.
if mom turns the music on, it means, all right, I'm throwing my hands up, so be it. It's kind of, I've just said chaos reigns. We're
Sure.
going to keep that, and I will break the tension. I would turn the music on, and I, through the years, have taught all my children how to dance. So
Mm-hmm.
all my kids can do a good jitterbug. All my
Yeah.
kids can free dance a little bit, and I literally taught that. And it was a tension breaker I would do when
Mm-hmm.
things got too intense at home. That's
Sure.
not the homeschool I want to have. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say, brain break, we're done. And I turn the music on and say, oh, going crazy. That was
Right.
a common thing in our house is we're going crazy. Or sometimes I would say, it's time for nature appreciation, let's go walking, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
I would just change up the entire routine. And if that means that I need to pause that lesson and go to a different day, I don't look at that as, oh, I'm failing them. I
Mm-hmm.
look at it as I'm seeing their needs, I'm assessing it, and I'm meeting them where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that in public school. You
Right.
can't.
Right.
That's the beauty of homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And tomorrow is a new day and we will reset. That's
Right.
exactly how I look
Right.
at it. Yeah.
This is
Yep.
reminding me of so many more things that I'd like to talk to you about. So I think a second podcast is probably in order.
That'd be great. I'd love
But
to.
I mean, there's so many things swirling in my head right now, especially about preparing a special needs child for adulthood, or like just when you're not going to be there. Because someday that's something as a special needs parent that I think about a lot is someday I'm not going to be here, and uh, they'll still
Yep.
be here without me, and that's sort of terrifying. So,
It is terrifying. I've actually brought in, when I was still running my local group here, I actually brought in a speaker for estate planning. So
oh,
parents that had um, profound, profound children that were not going to be functional
mhm,
without care outside
right,
of their home. Okay.
hmm,
Down syndrome was one of the big ones,
yep,
depending on their function level. I've met some very functional Down syndrome kids, but
right,
um, we had an investor come in and talk to them about how you could set up trusts,
mm,
how you could do, and that was actually really beneficial. I learned a lot from that.
right.
Something
I
I
think
was
that
actually
would
going
be
to
important
suggest to you
to
that
talk about.
we might bring in an estate planner for special needs as one of our
Right?
speakers this year.
Yeah,
Just an idea to throw out there.
right,
I've done that in many, many years. Yeah.
right.
But
So,
that's important. And knowing too documentation in
mhm,
terms of if you're going to college, if you're looking at housing through, you have to use government programs for some of that. Knowing what documentation you're going to need,
mhm,
that's a long road to walk down. It really is. Yeah.
right, right. So we
Yeah.
should do that. We should talk about that in the future.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So is there anything else that you wanted to say in this one, Lori?
Oh, um, I think that I would say to my parents, please be kinder to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We are all God's children. God made us in his image, and none of us are perfect beings. And I think that the pressures of family members that are questioning our choices, the pressures of if we're getting services in our community, if we have a special needs child,
Mm-hmm.
and are we meeting those expectations? Sometimes you need to stop and acknowledge ourselves and say, hey, taking care of me so that I can do my job well for them, that matters. Give yourself a little grace, give
Mm-hmm.
yourself a little love, and understand that you have value in that.
Right.
And that the fact that you're willing to even step outside the norm and take that challenge on already tells me a lot about who you are. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the kind of person I'd like to know.
Right.
So I give kudos to my parents for their guts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
For sure. Yes. Well, I want to say thanks, Lori, and thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us, everybody
Thanks for
who
having me.
tuned in.